On Thanksgiving morning, I walked into my childhood home for the first time in 6 years. The house smelled like rosemary, pie crust, and secrets. Then I saw it, the family painting above the fireplace, our yearly portrait done by a local artist. Everyone was there, my dad in his hunting jacket, my mom holding the pie, my sister mid-laugh, holding a wine glass. But me? I wasn't in it. Not faded, not misplaced, painted out, covered like I never existed. No one said a word. I poured myself coffee with a shaking hand, knowing exactly what was coming next. And I brought an envelope to make sure they knew it too. The moment I stepped inside, I knew I had made a mistake. Not the kind you catch right away, not the kind that screams. No. This one whispered, like the cold draft that followed me through the door of the house I used to call home. It smelled the same, wood polish, rosemary, and that cinnamon candle my mom insisted made everything feel festive. The air was warm, the lighting was soft, the table was already set. A perfectly curated holiday postcard. Except it didn't feel like mine anymore. Maybe it never did. I stomped the snow off my boots and glanced up at the fireplace. That's when I saw it. The painting. I hadn't even realized they'd commissioned a new family portrait. It was massive, maybe 4 feet wide, in a handcrafted walnut frame, proudly hung where our old Christmas wreath used to be, and it was beautiful in that way expensive things usually are. Warm tones, perfect details, just enough realism to make it honest. Everyone was there. My dad in his hunting jacket, gripping a coffee mug like it was a trophy. My mom, apron over her blouse, holding a pie like she'd baked it from scratch, though we all know she ordered it from that bakery downtown. And my sister, of course, laughing, always laughing, hair curled, glass of wine mid-swish, cheeks glowing like the damn sun kissed her personally. She was front and center, again, just like always. But I wasn't there. Not even in the back, not off to the side like I usually ended up in family photos. I wasn't blurry or forgotten. I was erased. It wasn't a matter of omission, it was a patch. You could see where I used to be, some leftover brush texture, a too smooth section where a hand had repainted the background to match the wall, a revision, a correction, a cover-up. I stood there for maybe 4 seconds, long enough for my stomach to twist, not long enough for anyone to notice, or maybe they did notice and just didn't care. From the kitchen, my mom's voice floated out, light and sweet. "Harper, you made it! Dinner's almost ready!" Like nothing was wrong. Like we hadn't spoken only 3 times in the past year, and 2 of those were group texts about Tessa's influencer deal with that vegan makeup brand. I didn't respond. I just hung up my coat, unclenched my jaw, and walked into the kitchen like a ghost returning to haunt the living. Mom was basting something that looked fancy. Tessa was leaning on the counter, barefoot, sipping wine from a stemless glass like she was in a holiday ad. She looked up and smiled like she'd been expecting a package, not a person. "You came," she said, as if I hadn't grown up here, as if I hadn't been the one who helped paint this kitchen 10 years ago when Dad refused to hire a contractor. "I did," I said quietly, forcing a smile. The kind you give when you've practiced not crying in your car. Dinner was choreographed, like a scene they'd rehearsed without me. Laughter, comments about Tessa's skin, her creative spirit, her bravery for moving downtown. No one asked about my work. No one noticed the envelope tucked inside my coat, the one I'd driven 8 hours to deliver. After dessert, they offered me the guest room. Not your old room, just the guest room, as if I'd never belonged here to begin with. The guest room smelled like dust and lavender sachets. Not the kind of lavender that calms you, the kind that tells you you're staying somewhere temporary. The mattress had a plastic crinkle beneath the sheets, probably one of those covers meant to keep out spills or renters. The lamp flickered when I turned it on. The bookshelf was filled with old cookbooks and self-help paperbacks from the early 2000s. There were no photos of me, no trophies, no drawings I made as a kid. Just one lone picture on the dresser, Tessa in a white dress, holding a paintbrush, smiling into a golden sunbeam like she invented joy. That room used to be mine. I used to sit at that window doing algebra homework while Tessa tried to teach our cat tricks. I used to hang posters above that bed and dream about getting into college, about going somewhere that didn't treat me like an afterthought. Now it was a glorified Airbnb with someone else's name on the welcome mat. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the silence settle around me. The kind of silence that used to feel like punishment, but now felt like confirmation. They'd chosen who to remember. And it wasn't me. The next morning, I woke to the smell of scrambled eggs and espresso. For a moment, my body flinched. Muscle memory, childhood reflex. Like I was supposed to rush down in my pajamas, hungry for French toast and a warm kitchen. But I took my time, brushed my teeth, put on makeup, let the room feel foreign. When I came downstairs, the performance was in full swing. Tessa was perched on the kitchen island in silk lounge pants, sipping almond milk from a wine glass. My mom was plating eggs with the precision of a food stylist. My dad was scrolling through his phone, glasses perched low on his nose. "Good morning," my mom chirped. "Hope the guest room was comfortable." "The mattress has opinions," I said, pouring myself some coffee. She laughed like I was joking. We went through the routine. No one asked about my job, my city, or my life. I wasn't sure they even remembered where I lived. My sister launched into a story about her upcoming trip to Lisbon, sponsored, of course, and how exhausted she was from managing so many brand deals at once. My dad nodded like she was presenting a quarterly report. "You've always had such drive, Tess," he said. She lit up like a Christmas tree. "You guys always believed in me. I'm so lucky." They beamed, the way they never did for me, like they had written themselves into her success and edited me out of the footnotes. I smiled and chewed my toast. There was no point in offering up my own news. I had just landed a freelance contract with a national publisher, biggest one yet, but I didn't say a word. I knew the line. I was the strong one, the one who figures it out. I had spent years earning my peace in silence, and today wouldn't be the day I handed it back. After breakfast, they handed out gifts. Tessa opened a sleek black box from Mom and Dad, vintage earrings from an estate jeweler downtown. "Oh my God, you guys," she squealed. "These are stunning." Dad smiled like he'd closed a business deal. "Thought you'd appreciate something timeless." I opened my own gift, wrapped in gold paper tied with twine. Inside, a ceramic mug that read "World's Okayest Daughter." They laughed. I didn't. That night, I took the envelope from my coat pocket and set it on the nightstand. Heavy paper, embossed seal. It felt like a weight I had been carrying since the day they lied to my face about Grandpa's will. Tomorrow I'd hand it to them. Not for revenge, not even for recognition. Just to reclaim the truth they'd buried underneath years of pretty lies. Thanksgiving brunch always ended the same way in our house. A parade of compliments over lukewarm coffee. My mom placing every dish like she was curating a museum exhibit. My dad cracking tired jokes about football games he never watched. And Tessa performing joy like it was her full-time job. This year was no different, except for the envelope burning a hole in my coat pocket. I waited. I smiled. I nodded as Tessa unwrapped a silk scarf from a boutique in Florence and gasped like she'd never seen luxury before. My mom teared up. My dad called her his little muse. When they finally turned their attention to me, it wasn't to ask about my work or my health. It was to hand me a gift bag with my name scribbled on a tag in someone else's handwriting. Inside, a candle labeled Holiday Hearth, probably a regift. "Smells like home, right?" Mom said brightly. I didn't answer. Instead, I reached into my coat and pulled out the envelope. Thick ivory paper, gold-foiled seal. I'd had it made by a law office just outside Denver, not for show, for clarity. I placed it quietly on the table, nestled between the half-empty mimosa glasses and the scattered ribbons. No announcement, no dramatic music, just an offering of truth, served cold. My mom noticed it first. She reached for it like it was out of place, like it disrupted her visual symmetry. "What's this?" she asked, frowning at the unfamiliar seal. I sipped my coffee. "It's from me." My dad glanced up from his phone. "You didn't have to get us anything, kiddo." "I know," I said softly. "I wanted to." That made them pause. My mom's fingers hovered over the seal. "Should we open it now?" "I'd prefer you didn't." So of course they opened it anyway. She broke the seal gently, like she expected tissue paper and a Hallmark card. My dad leaned in over her shoulder. Tessa kept sipping her drink, only mildly interested. Then the room changed. The silence turned dense. My mom's eyes started scanning faster. My dad stiffened. Tessa put down her glass. "What's going on?" she asked, sensing a shift in the air. Still no answer. That was my cue. I stood slow and steady. "You knew," I said. My voice wasn't angry. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the quiet like a blade. "Merry Thanksgiving," I added, half smiling. My mom blinked, still staring at the documents. "What is this?" "That," I said, "is Grandpa Arthur's original will. The real one. Not the version you gave me a summary of at the funeral." Her lips parted, but no words came out. "You told me he left a few keepsakes," I continued. "Some old tools and a little cash that went to funeral costs." My dad opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "He did." "No," I said. "He left me the duplex in Sheridan Hills. Full title, sole beneficiary. He even named me the legal custodian of the property trust." Tessa's face paled. "Wait, what duplex?" "The one you used for that rooftop shoot last year," I said, turning to her. "The one with the brick archways and the French balcony." She froze. "That property was in my name," I continued. "And you've been collecting rent from it for 3 years, illegally." My mom reached for her glass like her hands needed something to do. We were going to tell you, she mumbled. It's complicated. It's not, I said. It's theft. I could see it then, the cracks forming. Not just in their lies, but in the foundation they'd built on them. For once, I wasn't just the quiet one in the corner. I was the one holding the truth. And they couldn't look away anymore. You'd think that when you call out a family lie, the room would erupt. Screaming, tears, denial, something loud and messy. But no, the only sound after I said theft was the slow clink of Tessa's wine glass as she set it down. Carefully, like noise might make it worse. My dad dropped the paperwork like it stung. My mom looked at the ceiling, blinking fast like that would slow down time. Tessa looked at me like I had just confessed to setting the house on fire. But I was calm, too calm. I spoke with the tenants last week, I said, keeping my voice even. They've been paying rent directly to a trust account managed under my name, or so they thought. Turns out you rerouted everything to your own joint account using an old power of attorney form. My dad finally spoke. It wasn't personal, Harper. We just handled things. No, I said. You mishandled things, and you knew what you were doing. He rubbed his temples like I was giving him a headache. You're overreacting. I laughed, once, sharp and short. You edited me out of a family portrait and committed inheritance fraud, I said. But sure, let's talk about my tone. My mom reached across the table, her fingers hesitant. Sweetheart, you were always so independent, you never needed help. Because you made sure I believed that, I said, finally sitting back down. You told me there was nothing left, that Grandpa hadn't left anything real. Meanwhile, you used the rent from that duplex to fund Tessa's brand, your weekend spa trips, and whatever that business Dad tried to launch was. Dad stiffened. Don't talk about things you don't understand. Then explain it, I said, eyes locked on his. Explain why, for the past 3 years, I've been struggling to pay off student loans while you're collecting rent off a house that was legally mine. Tessa finally spoke, her voice trembling. I thought the house belonged to Mom and Dad. I didn't know. You didn't ask, I said. You just used it for Instagram shoots and said thanks for the aesthetic. She blinked like she wanted to argue, but the weight of it was too much. The house paid for your trip to London, didn't it? I added. And your car? And that so-called art retreat in Sedona? My mom reached for her water glass, but her hands were shaking now. We didn't think you'd want the responsibility, she whispered. You've always lived far away. I was far away, I said, because you made sure I never felt welcome here. My dad's chair screeched against the floor as he stood. Enough! If you're here to tear this family apart— No, I interrupted. You already did that. I'm just showing you the receipts. He pointed at the envelope like it was a bomb. You have no idea what you're doing. Oh, I do, I said. I've already filed with the county recorder. I've transferred the title into my name. The tenants have been notified. Any further rent will come to me. He froze. I'm not suing, I added. Not yet, but the house is mine, and your access to it is over. My mom looked like she might cry. But that house was our income. Then maybe, I said, standing, you shouldn't have stolen it. She whispered, We're still your family. I shook my head. No, you're people I used to be related to. That's not the same. Tessa crossed her arms. You think this makes you better than us? No, I said, just not beneath you anymore. The silence that followed was bitter and heavy. They didn't apologize. And I didn't wait for them to. They didn't try to stop me when I grabbed my coat. Didn't follow me to the door. Didn't beg or plead or raise their voices. Just sat there, stunned, staring at the paperwork like it might catch fire if they blinked too hard. I opened the front door to a gust of icy air, cold, clean, honest. My dad said one last thing before I stepped out. If you leave now, don't bother coming back. I paused. And then I turned to look at them, really look. My mom's eyes glassy, my dad stiff with anger, my sister still confused, like someone had just explained gravity to her for the first time. I think, I said, that's the first thing we've ever agreed on. And then I left. No slam, no shouting, just silence. For the first few days, there was nothing. No messages, no calls, just space. And God, it felt good, like breathing for the first time after holding it in for a decade. Then the guilt campaign began. A text from my mom. Sweetheart, we think there's been a misunderstanding. Can we talk? Then another. Don't let this one thing ruin everything. Your sister is very upset. Right. The real tragedy. Tessa being uncomfortable for the first time in her life. Then came a voicemail from my dad. I didn't even listen to it. Just stared at the notification and deleted it. The last time he called me kiddo was when I offered to help him set up his retirement fund, and he told me, let's leave the money stuff to people who understand it. Like him, the expert, the thief. Then came the email from Tessa. You really think this makes you the winner? Fine, take the house. But don't come crying back when you realize money doesn't buy family. A day later. Mom and Dad are really stressed. They're thinking about selling the condo. Congrats. That's what you wanted, right? No, actually, what I wanted was for them not to lie, but clearly that ship sailed years ago. By spring, the fallout was visible. A neighbor mentioned my parents were trying to refinance their condo. Another said my dad had picked up consulting again, which I knew meant cold calling his old clients. My mom? Working part-time at a boutique downtown, the kind of store where she used to drop hundreds on weekend shopping trips. Tessa moved back in with them. Her downtown loft? Too expensive now. Her collective dissolved, her brand floundered, and her GoFundMe for a creative rebirth raised a whopping $83. Two of those dollars were from my ex-boyfriend. I don't know why that detail made me laugh, but it did. Meanwhile, I fixed up the duplex, my house. It was dusty and tired, but it had good bones. I repainted the walls, replaced the drafty windows, had the plumbing redone. I cleared out all the old furniture my parents had stuffed inside, donated most of it. Kept just one thing, a navy blue armchair from my childhood. The only thing that didn't feel like it came with strings. I met the tenants. They were kind. One left me a thank you note after I lowered their rent by $50. Said I was the first landlord who treated them like a person. That meant more than any apology my parents could have mustered. You know what's strange? Silence used to feel like punishment. Now it feels like space, like peace. I stopped checking my phone every hour, stopped waiting for the next guilt trip in message form. I started sleeping through the night. I started breathing like I meant it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. 3 months passed, then 6, then a year. The messages slowed, then stopped. The silence didn't feel cold anymore. It felt earned, like standing on land after drifting for years at sea. The house was quiet most days, but not the kind of quiet that aches, the kind that settles into your bones like a warm blanket. I got to know the creaky floorboards, the way the sun fell across the living room at 4 p.m. I planted herbs out back, basil, rosemary, mint, things that grow in their own time and don't ask for too much. I didn't fix the navy armchair, left the worn fabric as it was. Every time I sat in it, I remembered I had kept something on my terms. Not because it was valuable, but because it was mine. One afternoon, I checked the mail and found a letter. Not a text, not an email, a real letter in my mother's handwriting. The envelope smelled faintly like her perfume, Chanel No. 5, same as always. I stood in the doorway holding it, letting the weight of it sink in. 2 pages, neatly written. Lines like, "We didn't know. It wasn't on purpose. We thought you were okay." And my personal favorite, "You've always been so strong. We didn't realize you ever needed us." That one made me sit down, not because I felt touched, but because it was so perfectly them. That sentence was what people say when your silence has benefited them, and they're suddenly uncomfortable that it no longer does. She closed the letter with, "We hope one day you'll come home. Maybe we can start over. Maybe we can be a family again." There was no mention of the will, no mention of rent, no apologies for the lies, the theft, the years of emotional erasure, just perfume and performance and the hope that my silence would return. I folded the letter, slid it into the drawer of my desk, and never responded. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't need anything else from them. I still live in the house. Not out of spite. Not to make a point. Because it's peaceful here. Because when I wake up, I hear birds, not arguments muffled through thin walls. Because I drink my coffee in the kitchen and don't have to pretend to be someone I'm not just to be loved. I repainted the front steps last summer, a warm gray, the kind of shade no one else would pick, but that makes me smile every time I see it. I replaced the rusted mailbox, built a small bench for the front porch, bought a secondhand record player for the living room. And on the mantle, there's a photo. It's just me, standing on the front porch, holding the keys, smiling, not big, not for show. Just the kind of smile that comes when you know, deep in your gut, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. No one else is in the frame, and no one had to be cut out of it. Sometimes I still hear things. A forwarded message from a cousin. A holiday card with no return address, just thinking of you, hope you're well. But I don't answer. Not because I'm angry, not anymore. But because I already have what they never managed to give me. A name on a deed, a place to belong, a life that's mine. There was a time I believed that if I just worked hard enough, just earned it, maybe they'd love me like they loved her. But now I know, real love isn't something you earn, it's something you give. And what they offered came with conditions. What I gave myself was everything they wouldn't. So no, I don't miss them. I don't rehearse what I'd say if they called. I don't fantasize about a reunion that fixes everything, because I already fixed it, by walking away. And that, it turns out, was the only gift I ever truly needed.